Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sharing Wisdom. I'm your host, Angie Wisdom, and today I've got a great episode for you all. We're digging into three, let's say, books and concepts that you all are going to love. They're going to make a difference in your life from a career perspective and a personal development perspective. So I have somebody here, Jacqueline Twillie, who I met a couple of years ago. She was speaking at an event and she was speaking about her book, Don't Leave Money on the Table. It was all about negotiating your pay and your salary and just negotiation in general. And she had such a great framework around it in changing the messaging about not being in conflict around negotiating that it just pulled me in. And I've loved her ever since. So I'm happy she's here because she's got two other books that we're going to talk about. One is Navigating the Career Jungle, and the other is Dear Resilient Leader. The reason why I wanted her on here, you're going to know when you listen to her, but also all three of her books tie into core pieces that I embrace and that I work on and that I share with you all. Authenticity, your values, and your confidence. You'll see how we weave those in, but you're going to really love what she has to offer you. She's the founder of Zero Gap. So she works with very large companies and presenting programs to them on how they can be resilient leaders and also close the gap as far as negotiations are concerned. She's got a wealth of knowledge to share. So let's get started. I am so excited, first, to reconnect with you, but second, to bring all of your wisdom to my audience and dig into what you have to share here.
I'm so excited, Angie. It's always a delight to speak with you. And yeah, let's put our seatbelts on and have a great conversation.
I love it. Well, you know what drew me to you originally was when I first saw you speak and I met you at a Fierce Lab event. And you were talking about your book and you were giving negotiation tips on don't leave money on the table. And that blew my mind. I mean, one, just to see the reaction of the women in the audience digging into everything that you said, and they had so many questions. So I know we definitely have to talk about that because women getting what they deserve and the money and, asking for what they want is a huge aspect. But I do want to touch on your other books because three things that you're presenting out there with your books. You've got Navigating the Career Jungle, you've got Don't Leave Money on the Table, and then most recently, Dear Resilient Leader. For those people who are listening right now and going, okay, what does this mean to us? I want to say in simple terms, values, self-worth, right? And then your authenticity. And those are
Yes.
three things that I love, love, love. So I want to kind of put it to you. What is the first place we should start when we think about your three books and those three topics?
Thank you so much, Angie. And I want to give a shout out to Tara, who runs the Fierce Lab, for connecting us. She's so wonderful, and I love that platform as well. So,
Yes.
to answer your question, those pillars, Navigating the Career Jungle is a book that I wrote for early career professionals, just to really level set and say, these are the things that you will experience in the workplace, and this is how you navigate those things. And so, when it comes to authenticity, when you're just new in your career, you're still trying to find your voice and still trying to find the values that most resonate with you in the workplace. So, navigating the career jungle is a self exploration where it helps you to hone in on who you are as an individual in the workplace and also how to present yourself and network. And so, when it comes to sharing your personal achievements and sharing the things that matter to you, learning how to walk that balance of being confident but not arrogant, that's what that book kind of takes us through. And so, each of the books that I've written, they're building blocks upon one another. And so you don't have to be a woman to gain insight from Don't Leave Money on the Table. And you don't have to be an early career professional to take away tips from Navigating the Career Jungle, because all of it just will enhance your skill set and help you to be the professional that you aspire to be.
I love that. And, the authenticity piece, I talk about that a lot because that's what really changed my trajectory in my career. I realized I was lacking authenticity. I was showing up as somebody I wasn't. I was in a new career. I was young. I was in the financial industry space. And I struggled with that because I thought I needed to be who they wanted me to be instead of who I really was. So I always say that your biggest success will come from being your most authentic self. So when you look at your book and the work that you've done in the research, how does that relate to really tapping into your authenticity, but being in that right career for yourself?
Yeah, so it's less I write less about being in the right career for yourself and more about tapping into who you are and being unapologetic
Mm,
about who you are in the workplace. And what that looks like, that doesn't mean you're going on with blinders and you're not self-aware. It's quite opposite. So I have this framework that I talk about. It's the AHA framework. It's your attitude, your habits, and your actions. And I speak about this in
mm.
multiple books that I've written. And so when it really gets down to showing up as your unapologetic self, aka your authentic self, what is your attitude when you're showing up into the workplace each day? What are the habits that you're repeating? Are they helpful to what you want to achieve at work, or are they harmful? And having that level of self-awareness really helps you to hone in on the behaviors that you want to emulate day in and day out. And then the final thing is, are your actions aligned? Because we can talk a good game and we can have the most amazing goals for ourselves. But if we're not putting in the work day to day, then it kind of falls by the wayside. So in Dear Resilient Leader, I really unpack that AHA method, and I show the diagram of the AHA. And so I love it because someone sent put a video review of the book on Amazon, and she said, "Now I have a question. Is this AHA or AHA? Either way, I love it, and it doesn't matter how you say it as long as you get the essence of it. What is your attitude? What habits and what is the action that follows that? And it's as long as you focus on those things, it will help you to unlock your unapologetic, most authentic self."
So good. And you know what I love about that aha is that those are your controllables. How many
Yeah.
times do people get hung up on the things that they can't control, what other people think and what's going to happen, but really focusing in on your attitude, your habits and your actions. Those are all yours to control. So put your energy where you can actually control it, right? What do you recommend when you're helping people get to know their authentic self? I mean, your book is all about that discovery. What are some of the key points to help people really tap into who they are?
Yeah, such a good question. So, the same framework that we use for negotiation, the latte method, is the same method that you can apply to getting to know yourself. So, in the Don't Leave Money on the Table book, we walk you through how to set up your negotiation strategy and like really hone in on what's right for you. But if you look at that same framework, latte, look, anticipate, think, talk, and evaluate. You can apply those same things to self discovery. So look at the details. What are the values that drive you each day? And more important than what those values are, why are they important to you? Okay. So that's that really critical piece. Now, the next step is anticipate. What are the blind spots that you have in your professional development? Are you hitting the mark in certain areas and exceeding? And what's the driver behind that? And on the flip side, are you missing the mark professionally in some areas? And what's driving that? So, really getting to the root of it. And then that's the anticipate part. When we get to the think part, we talk a lot about thinking about your walk away point in terms of negotiation, but the same holds true for values. If your integrity is going to be compromised in any way, you really want to understand if you're being put in a position where you're like, I'm not sure if I should be doing this. And it doesn't have to be an external force. It can be something within that's saying, I'm not quite performing this way. Can I fudge the story and do XYZ? Like really uncovering what is that walk away point when you say, you know what, self, we're going to stand true to who we are. We're going to be authentic. We're going to be unapologetic and we're going to be honest here. So it can be external, but more importantly, it needs to be internal. And
Mm.
then when we get to that next step, which is the talk it through, what vocabulary are you using to talk about yourself? In all of our workshops at Zero Gap in the Resilient Leaders program, we really hone in on something where we have people to understand that when you're negotiating, it's a conversation, it's not a battle. And when it comes to talking about yourself, are you someone who dismisses compliments? Are you saying, don't thank me, no big deal? Or on the flip side, are you really owning your value? Are you saying, thanks for recognizing that? I pride myself on doing well. So that talk piece is really important. Again, we're going through the duality of internal and external talk. And then that last step is evaluate. And this goes back to the AHA method, right? They are building blocks on one another. When you're evaluating yourself, when you're thinking about how you show up in a meeting, how you're giving presentations, the work that you're delivering day to day, and the people that you're leading, what is the evaluation framework? And that's where we go back to, what's your attitude? What are the habits and what actions are you taking? So when you put those in combination like that and you put it in the sequence, you really start to have a framework for you to unpack who you are, but more importantly, for you to perform at full capacity in the workplace.
So much awareness in there. That's the word that kept kind of coming to my mind as you were saying all that. I'm like, this is a ton of self-awareness for people.
Oh, yeah.
And it really is that simple. Like, if you spend the time being self-aware and looking at what you're doing, you're going to learn about yourself. But the magic question is, how do you create that self-awareness? Because I think, and you tell me, I'm curious on your opinion on this. I feel like it's the constant, like, two steps ahead, always in the future, not in the present, that really prohibits people sometimes of being self-aware. Always on the go, you always have so much going on and you lack that presence. What are your thoughts on that?
So when you said that, it made me think of this conversation that Oprah had with Eckhart Tolle, The Power
Oh,
of Now
yes.
book. And
Mm-hmm.
that conversation when she said, how do you remind people to be present? And it's simple as, when you're washing your hands, just to have a thought. Yeah, right now I'm washing my hands. And so
Mm,
what I find that triggers most leaders to be present when they're activated and they're frustrated about something, most leaders that I work with have developed the skill to say, oh, I'm upset. Let me calm down. Let me respond instead of reacting. And so we also need to build that muscle for when things are going well. Instead of just saying, heck yeah, I'm crushing it, to sit there and say, okay, oh, what's happening now? What are the things that I'm doing right now that's contributing to this success? So, yeah, that Power of Now book, if you haven't read it, folks, highly recommended. It's such a good book to help you get grounded and be present in the current moment.
it is one of my favorites. It's not an easy read for a lot of people, but it is definitely
And
one of
that's
my
where the
favorites.
audio book comes in handy.
Yeah, I did. And I'm like, I love the audiobook. I think his voice is so like soothing. One of my clients was like, I go to sleep every time I listen to it because it's just so peaceful. But it really is. And I'm thinking about when you were saying like washing your hands, I always tell people to use your senses. So like if you're washing your hands, feel them. Like if you're engaging your senses, you're probably present. If you're doing something and you're like, I don't even remember feeling my hands as I was washing them, you're probably not, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really, really good point there, and a huge part of having that self-awareness. So I love the way you've built this, because if you look at that authenticity piece and who you are, no doubt you start to build up your worth and your value and your confidence because you actually know more about yourself. So
Yeah.
that leads you into that don't leave money on the table, which
Yeah.
you tell me. I think that largely comes from people not believing in who they are or not even knowing who they are. So they don't have that power to ask for the money.
You know, the research shows us that when it comes to negotiation, it's about equal between men and women when they go to the negotiation table. So, where's the breakdown in terms of not leaving money on the table if men and women are both asking? Part of it is education and awareness. Over the years, I've taught over 10,000 participants how to
Mm.
negotiate through my workshops. And overwhelmingly, Angie, the thing that breaks my heart is that most people don't realize that they are supposed to negotiate. Now, over the years, I've seen more and more awareness and education around this. But the fact that people just don't ask to begin with is where a lot of the challenge has fallen. So, Linda Babcock and Sarah Lasseter wrote a book over maybe 15 years ago now or longer. It's called Women Don't Ask. And in their book, they had a study where they explored that women who don't negotiate, starting with their first job, stand to lose over $500,000 over the course of their career. a
Mm.
$500,000 over the course of their career. Now, recently in 2024, the U.S. Department of Labor released a report in the spring of 2024 saying that when it comes to Black women in the equal pay gap, the economic value of what's left on the table is over $40 billion annually.
Wow.
So it shows the gravity of this problem, but even more so, what it shows is that there needs to be even more education around negotiating so money isn't left on the table collectively. And the reason why I get so passionate about this is because education is a small gap that we can close to solve this
Mhm.
issue. So the more pay transparency that organizations share, Salesforce is like a beautiful example of pay transparency and how they're closing the gap. The more we have big companies who do that, the more we can close these gaps, and it becomes less burden on the individual to find out the secret information of what is the pay range and what I actually qualify for. Now, with all of that being said, Angie, you know I'm going to advocate for each person to be negotiating. Don't leave money on the
Mhm.
table. And that's where the book comes in with those practical strategies. But it's so important for me to recognize and to elevate for individuals. This is a systematic issue. It's not an individual issue that's contributed to this problem. But once we can solve the systematic issues, it becomes easier for the individuals to advocate for themselves.
In 2 points in your book that really were like just mind blowers for me were, and that I was like, oh, this is why this happens, right? Was one, because they just don't ask,
Yeah.
and I think that's largely how you develop when you're being raised. Our most foundational years are what I think between 2 and 7 or 2 and 9, something like that. And so it's just what you're taught, you don't speak up, you don't ask. And two, the idea that asking or wanting is conflict. Like when you
Mm.
said that, like you guys have got to be on the same side. I always say get on the same side of the table. When you look at it as if this is a battle, as this is conflict, most people want to walk away from it. But it's the mindset that says it's battle. So you talk so much about that, and I think that's so powerful. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we talk about in Don't Leave Money on the Table and in Dear Resilient Leader, the
Mm.
importance of the growth mindset. And so Carol Dweck is one of my favorite authors. Her book, Growth Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, is a required reading for our Resilient Leaders program. And the reason why that's so important is because she gives practical examples of how to go from a fixed mindset, meaning you're defeated and you don't think you can improve, and she gives these practical examples of how to walk that bridge over to the growth mindset, where you recognize the challenge and say, oh, you know what? I'm not good at this yet. And so the power of that word yet really unlocks a lot in human psychology and allows us to walk that bridge to improve on those skills. So for some people, they'll come to me and when they're in a negotiation workshop with us and they'll say, I just suck at negotiation. I'm just not good at it at all. And so the first thing we have to do is work on the mindset. And we give them examples of how they negotiate day to day. For example, if you're going to eat with a friend, you're probably negotiating and you don't realize it. You're discussing what restaurant to eat, what cuisine. If you have young humans in your life, you definitely negotiate consistently because young humans are so persistent. Like, tell them no, and they're going to ask why, and they're going to come up with three alternative ways to ask the same question. So, with the mindset piece, we really walk people across this bridge of, you know what, you do know how to negotiate, but what we're going to do is enhance those skills so that when you're going up for a new job or a promotion or negotiating a business deal, you can have the vocabulary as well as the confidence to do that. And that's why people love the latte method, honestly, because it's a simple checklist where they can look at the details, anticipate challenges, think about their walkaway point, talk it through, and evaluate the options. And they're like, oh, it's not that scary. I can do this.
It's like all of a sudden you're giving them, not that you know everything, but you're putting a proactive approach to it, where I think most of the time it's like this big scary unknown. Like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, I don't know how this is going to go. I'm just going to go in there firing away and hopefully it works out. But you're really going, let's get intentional about this and really think about what this process looks like. There's got
That
to,
is the key.
yeah, there's got to be some results. I know, and I'm just curious for you, people that have gone through your program or statistically, what are some of the wins when people really start to ask for what they want and approach this negotiation differently, say using your latte method?
There has been countless. Actually, the first week of August of 2024 will celebrate 10 years in business at Zero Gap. So the
Mm,
case studies and the testimonials and success, they are out of this world. Top of mind, what's coming to me is that when the core team at Amex went through the training, they said that they could apply 90% of what they learned into their day-to-day performance. And for a
mm,
large organization like Amex to share, to go through the program and have those results, that's astounding. On an individual level, there's been so many cases where women have doubled their salary, going from one position to the next, which highlights how underpaid they were in the beginning to have such drastic results. But then also, one of my favorite studies is someone who attended a workshop that I taught in Atlanta 8 years ago on negotiation. She took some really good notes. And every year for the past 3 or 4 years, I've received a note from her or one of her children or friends of her adult children who said, I've used those notes from the class that you taught and it's helped me to negotiate. And in some cases, it was a 16% bump, and in some cases, it was an 84% bump. So the
wow.
range was incredible. So I could go on and on about hearing the success stories, but my number one request when I teach a negotiation workshop is, because we know this pay disparity is so wide and it impacts women more than any other group, I am always requesting that the participants of the workshops take what they learn, at least one thing, and share it with a person that's in high school, preferably a young
Mm.
female. So I'm going to ask the same thing to the audience sharing wisdom. If you find anything valuable today, share that wisdom with someone you know in high school, preferably a female, so that they enter the workforce with more knowledge to help them show up and perform at full capacity.
I love it. And if you're listening, there's so many little nuggets I'm sure that people are taking away right now. So before we run out of time, we really have to move into Dear Resilient Leader because I'm a big, big fan of leadership. And one of my number one things that I work with people on as soon as we get together are values. So talk to me about the values showing up and your resilient leader.
Yeah, so the Resilient Leaders Program is the flagship program at Zero Gap, and the Dear Resilient Leader book is the companion to that program, that 3 month leadership intensive that we go through. And so this curriculum's been developed with a lot of research for almost a decade, and I'm really proud of the program. And we really start this program focusing on who you are as an individual. And we could really go back and we dig deep into what are the things that motivate you. And also, we have to remind leaders that what motivated you when you took a job can be different from what motivates you today, because market conditions change, business units change. So it's really important that you evaluate this, once a year, to say, what is my driving motivators? What are the values that most connect me to not only this position, but also to inspire the people that I lead? And so, Tashana Brown Duckett, she is the CEO of TIAA, and she says, you rent your title, but you own your character. And
Mm,
so when it comes to that character piece, the leaders who are most effective, and in our research, when we have people go through the Resilient Leader program, we ask them, what are the characteristics of the leaders that you admire? And they're always tied to values, very distinct values that leader not only speaks about, but they also live by those. And so when we're helping leaders to really think about their legacy and focus on their character and not just the title, that's where we really get to have a lot of fun. And in most cases, the leaders that we work with, they are able to explicitly call out their behavior that's tied to the value.
So powerful. It sounds to me like you take it away from this performance-based action tied to the title to really the internal performance of like who you are and what you have to offer.
So it's actually intertwined, Angie. I love your call out there. And what we do is it's still performance based, right? But it's not ego based. It's not
Mm.
this is my title, Jacqueline the CEO. What it's more of, this is Jacqueline the human. And the way I'm able to bring results to my organization is because these are the values that drive me. So if innovation is the value that's most resonating with me now, what going back to aha, what is my attitude? What is my habits? And what are the actions that follow that really reinforce that innovation spirit at work? And when you do those things, you exceed any KPIs that you set because you're driven by this motivator that's so deeply ingrained in who you are.
Love that. And it's such a win-win for, I'm sure, the company itself, because you've got, your leaders and your founders really focused on those KPIs, but they really see the results once you tap into the people as humans. Can't wait
Absolutely.
to dig into that work a little bit more. I feel like talking to you and all the value, we haven't talked in so long. And so I'm so glad you were able to come on here because I feel like in a way you're like this best kept secret. You have all of this information that, you know, piles on one another and really helps people tap into their authenticity, what they're worth, advocating for themselves, and then showing up and making an impact. So I am so grateful that you were here. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of throw anything out there that you feel is really important for people to take away outside of what you've already shared.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, one of the things that I find to be most helpful, and I just shared this on LinkedIn this weekend, you cannot show up as your unapologetic, most authentic self if you're not taking time to recharge. So,
Mhm.
you have to schedule time away from screens, even if that's 30 minutes every weekend, where you walk away from devices and you get to ground and center yourself and be with yourself. That's really how you really take your leadership to the next level. That's how you prevent yourself from being burnt out and exhausted. No one can be unapologetic in the workplace if you're stressed out and tired. So, when you're taking those walks, I often tell the resilient leaders make sure you take some water with you because hydration is also your friend in helping you to maintain your best self so you can perform at full capacity.
I feel like people are going to think I plugged you to say that because you know me and what I talk about. It's all about
Yes.
starting with you and filling yourself up. So I swear I did not tell her to say that, but it really, really is true. I mean, that's your fuel. And the more people can understand that and lean into it, the performance comes. So, what a great message you left us with. Wrap us up here with where they can find you, Jacqueline, so that they can dig into your programs or your books or follow you along on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I'm Jacqueline Twillie on LinkedIn. It's my favorite place to hang out online. And Zero Gap is zerogap.co. And there you can find many pathways to unlock some of the strategies that I've shared today.
I love it. You guys go follow Jacqueline along and take all her knowledge because she puts a lot of it out there. And if you like this episode or you're going, I know somebody who needs to hear all of this, make sure that you share that along with them. Thanks so much for being here with you, Jacqueline.
Thanks, Angie.